The Lake Lady. Once, long ago, in Wales, there was a young man, the son of a widow. One day he drove his mother's cattle and sheep to graze on the steep mountain side by the edge of the lake. It was a miserable day. Mist and clouds rolled over the tops of the mountains, but as he watched, it seemed to him that the sun came out suddenly. But when he looked down at the lake, he saw that it hadn't been sunshine that was making the day so bright. There, in the middle of the water, on an island, sat the most beautiful lady he had ever seen. Her golden dress shone, and she was combing her long golden hair. Without thinking what he was doing, the young man pulled out some barley bread that was baked hard like biscuit and some cheese that his mother had given him for his dinner. There he stood, holding the food out in his two hands to the lady and calling. She turned to look, saw him, and rose. Then she seemed to glide over the top of the water towards him. Coming quite near, she looked at the bread and at the cheese, but shook her head. All she said was, "Hard-baked is your bread, too hard. With such bread you can never feed me." The young man still held out his arms to her, but she vanished. When he got home, he told his mother everything that had happened and added that he would die if he could not get the fairy lady to be his wife. So next day, as the lady didn't seem to like barley biscuit, his mother gave him doughy bread with his cheese. Perhaps this would please her better. Long the young man stood watching the waters of the lake. At last it seemed to him as if, once more, the sun shone golden, for once again the beauty of the lady with her gold hair was lighting the mountainside. Though she had seemed beautiful before, today she seemed to him even more lovely. Once again he held out his hands to her, this time with the half-baked bread and the cheese, and he called, telling her that he would marry none but her and that he would die if she would not return his love. But though she came nearer and looked at what he held in his hand, she only shook her head and said in her soft voice, "Unbaked is your bread. I will not have you." Once more, plead as he would, she vanished. When he got home, he was so miserable that he threw himself on his bed, but when his mother asked him what had happened, he told her. Then his mother took the bellows and blew up the fire, and she made a special loaf, and this time it wasn't hard bread that she made, nor yet half-baked. She baked that loaf so that it was just right, crisp and well-risen, and the next morning the young man took it and went again to the steep mountain side with the sheep and cattle. Long he waited by the lake, leaning on his stick. All morning the sun shone, but the waters of the lake lay quiet. Midday came. Nothing. At last it began to grow dusk, and the young man was very sorrowful, for now he thought the lady would not come. He was rounding up the sheep and cows sadly to go home again, and had just taken a farewell look at the lake, when, to his surprise, he saw, not the lady, but several beautiful, sleek, black cows walking along on the top of the water. He waited, for surely the cows would not be alone. Surely the lovely maiden would come again. Come she did, and she looked to him lovelier than ever. This time the young man waded into the water to meet her and held out the barley bread and the cheese to her. She came and looked at the bread, and after he had begged her many times, she took it and said that she loved him and would be his wife. But there must be one condition. After they were married, he must be careful never to touch her with anything made of iron, for if he did, she could not stay with him however much she might want to do so. She would have to go back to the lake and would never see him again. At that he laughed for joy and said that to keep a condition like that would be easy enough. But alas, no sooner was this agreed than the lady vanished once more. The young man was desperate and cried out that even if it drowned him, he would dive into the water to find her. Just as he was going to plunge in, the lady rose once more, and this time a tall and splendid old man stood beside her. "If you will be a kind and faithful husband to my daughter," said the old man, "you may marry her, and what is more, she will bring you a splendid dowry. You will have as many cows and as many sheep as she can count of each without drawing her breath. But remember, if you were ever unkind to her, or if, even by mistake, you ever touch her with anything made of iron, she will have to come home to the lake. She will have to bring her dowry with her, and worst of all, you will never see her again." The young man was very joyful and said he understood all that. So there and then the old man said the words over them and joined their hands in marriage. Then, when they had kissed, the old man said it was time to think about the dowry, and told the beautiful lady to begin counting, and that she must count without drawing breath. This is the way she counted: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, as quickly as ever she could. The first time she counted 3 times without drawing breath, so that 15 fine sheep rose from the lake. The next time she managed just as well, so 14 sleek black cows and a splendid white-headed bull rose up and stood on the shore. Then, followed by all the magic beasts, the young man led his bride home. They lived happily together, and in all that part of Wales no one had seen such milk or tasted such butter as the milk and butter from the fairy cows. And as for the fairy sheep, no one had ever had such fine wool to spin as came from their fleeces. You can guess how careful the man was that never any bit of iron that might be in his hand should come near his beautiful wife. As the years went by, 3 sons were born to them. More years passed, and these boys grew up, and they were as clever as they were handsome. By this time their father was no longer young, but the fairy lady never seemed to grow any older, and was always as beautiful and soft-voiced as on the day when she rose from the lake. At last her husband became old and bent, but that did not matter, for he had his 3 fine sons to help him, and with their help, and with the fairy cattle and sheep, which had become a big herd and a fine flock, their farm prospered. One day there was to be a big cattle fair, and the husband and wife decided they would both go to it, leaving the 3 sons to mind the farm. So they went out together onto the mountainside to catch 2 ponies to ride to the fair. Now the place where these ponies were grazing was the very mountainside by the lake where they had first met. The fairy wife, of course, was still as light-footed as a girl and ran quickly, and in a minute she had caught one of the ponies by the mane, and then she called to her old husband to throw her a halter to hold it fast. Without thinking what he was doing, he threw not a halter, but a bridle, and, as ill luck would have it, the iron bit touched his wife on the hand. The fairy lady looked at him sorrowfully and hung her head. Then, without a word to him, she let go the pony and began to sing in her sweet voice. This is what she sang. Brindled cow, white speckled, spotted cow, bold freckled, the 4 in the field mottled, the old white-faced, the grey and white-headed bull. Come, come, come home. The wind rose and the sky grew dark. Through the storm the lady sang again, the 4 grey oxen that are on the field, come you also. Come, come, come home. Then the cows that were in their stalls in the cow-house came out, though some had been so well fastened that they had to pull their mangers out with them. The 4 grey oxen came, still dragging the plough after them. Then she called again, and all the sheep and their lambs came bleating. Then, in a moment, the lake lady and all her dowry vanished under the waters of the lake. As her old husband went back to the house, he wept. After a while he called his 3 sons and told them everything that had happened. They had never before heard the story of their beautiful mother, but now he told it all. Soon they began to comfort him. "Do not grieve, dear father," said they. Be sure that our mother will still watch over us." So, because they believed this, the three sons went that evening and for many other evenings to watch by the lakeside. But watch as they would, nothing but the breeze ruffled the still waters. But at last, one night, when the moon was full, and when all the three sons were there, the beautiful lake lady rose out of the water just as they had hoped, just as she had risen when their father had been young. And so it was that the lovely lady came to her three sons. Greeting them tenderly, she told them that she still loved them as well as ever, and that if they would heed her, they would become great and famous, for she would teach them all manner of healing charms. No evil magic, only good. Then she came to them out of the water and onto the shore, and walked with them. She showed them where the healing plants grew, and how there was one, eye bright, that was good for sickness of the eyes, and another, feverfew, for fevers, and another, woundwort, to heal every kind of wound. She taught them when to gather each kind, and the words that they must say, and how to boil and compound them. So well did they listen to everything that their fairy mother told them, that these three became the three wisest and most famous doctors in all Wales. When they grew old, they taught these things to their own sons and daughters after them, so that for hundreds of years sick people came from far and near to be healed by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, who had all been taught the secrets of the beautiful lake lady.